Bloomberg Audio Studios.
Podcasts, radio, news.
It is single best idea. We're thrilled with the initial response. Thank you, particularly on Apple. I mean, everybody gets their podcast through Apple pretty much, and we greatly appreciate the initial response. What we're doing here is 5 minutes, 6 minutes, 7 minutes tops with two ideas, two conversation points from Bloomberg Surveillance that we did this morning. Today, there were so many good conversations. We've even pushed one of today's conversations into tomorrow's podcasts. For now, we're going to start with Liz Ann Sonders, and what's great about this, and I really want to sell another podcast. You can listen to my podcast, 6 minutes. You add it on. I mean, you know, it's what you do. And you can also listen to Barry Ritholtz on Masters in Business and his podcast, which is a conversation of an hour and X minutes with Liz Ann Sonders. It's a brilliant effort by Barry, as always. And Liz Ann Sonders, we talked about her years at Schwab and the philosophy of Schwab to the individual investor, which I completely stole from Barry Ritholtz. So Barry gets a copyright royalty here today. I think it's like, half a beverage or something like that. But here's Liz Ann Sonders later in our conversation on factor investing, on quality, on dividends. We talked a little bit about momentum being a challenge, but here is Liz Ann Sonders on factor investing.
What we have continued to do, though, is focus on factors, even a little bit more than sectors. And we still think you want to stay up in quality. Momentum has been a dominant factor, but what's interesting is that's more of a concept than a factor. Momentum just says, it just says that stocks that have been working continue to work. Right. What you can do, though, because a lot of comparisons are being made to the late 90s. Momentum as a factor is doing well right now. That's the same thing happened in the 90s. But the actual fundamental factor that was most highly correlated to momentum in the late 90s was negative earnings. The factor right now most positively correlated to momentum are factors like high return on equity, strong free cash flow, and a negative correlation right now is negative earnings. So momentum is just a concept, but you then have to look at what are the fundamentals of the types of stocks that continue to do well. And I think that's an important differentiation.
Liz Ann Sonders there with some really interesting comments on this equity market, the vogue of the moment. Drives me nuts. This momentum investing, I have real trouble with it. I'm much more where Liz Ann is looking at quality as being the dominant observable theme right now. It's subject to change, but certainly that's what we've seen. Part of what we do here, and the advantage we have, is what Matthew Winkler, the editor-in-chief emeritus of Bloomberg News, invented, which is the Bloomberg headline. They come in two forms. They come out, amber waves of gray. They come out with an amber color against a black background. And then when they're important, they come out with a red, which we call a hot headline, or even a red sticky is sort of over 30 years, what we call those headlines. Paul Sweeney and my dialogue changed this morning with red stickies on this collapse of management at Boeing. I'm not going to go into the details right now, but needless to say, it is their clients, their customers, the airlines speaking. That, to me, was a demonstrative thing over the last 3 days, where you had O'Leary of Ryanair, you had Kirby of United Airlines, and others just saying enough. There's got to be some triage done. The triage is the CEO out, the chairman out. There's a new head of commercial aerospace, Stephanie Pope. And Mr. Malenkov of Qualcomm will step in as the chairman. He's on the board now, and he'll step in as chairman as they await a great CEO search. We went to all of our good people, Brooks Sutherland and others on this. Of course, out on the sell side, there's all these great names, Kai von Rumer and Helene Becker together at TD Cowen is quality. But one of the great names here who's really studied for decades aviation and the challenges of Boeing at this immediate moment this morning was George Ferguson.
I mean, they've run down the road of of automotive folks in the past too, and I think that's one thing I'd caution. Right? Okay. Automotive and aerospace are very different. Automotive, much higher volumes, right? And so very different business tolerances in aerospace are much tighter. Right. I don't know. I think I'd be looking through some of the engine manufacturers and figuring out who inside the engine manufacturers are really good at engineering and manufacturing. and who could potentially come over, right? You've got David Joyce on the board. He can help you figure out who the right person might be. I'm not sure it's David Joyce, right? But that might be one of the places I look.
George Ferguson of Bloomberg Intelligence there providing some really important perspective. To get the week started, it's a 4-day work week. I just want to say thank you to all of you as we begin Single Best Idea. It's our short podcast here for Bloomberg Surveillance, just 2 ideas that we had in conversation today.